Not sure if this works, but I'm in a very rowdy place and the noise is here. I'm not so sure whether you can hear. People have always asked me the question, what exactly is presence? And I have a problem telling them. The reason is because I have to tell them one statement which puzzles them all the time. You cannot think of presence. Presence is not thinkable. That sounds crazy to many. If you are thinking about presence, whatever you are thinking of the present is not the present. Presence is unthinkable. And this great truth is actually similar to God. God, the true one source, is not thinkable. But if you want to think of a God, you're actually creating an image of God in your own mind. In other words, you've just created an idol. I guess you'll be asking me a very important question. Then how am I ever going to know God? That's correct. You can do it through imagination. That's the answer. But if you are serious about knowing God, you have to enter your own presence. For your presence is of God. Now let's make it very clear. I'm not referring to presence as myself that you're looking at. Well, I'm here sitting down and my presence is at Onan Road where I live. But that's my physical presence. The presence that I'm talking about is the I am. Where am I? You wouldn't want to say that my presence is in the body. No, my presence isn't. My presence is not in the body. So that's why, if a person were to ask me about my presence, well, it will confuse him. Because if I say that presence is something you cannot think of, he will just simply go bonkers. Because my presence is right here, physically. So why would I be saying that presence, my presence, is unthinkable? Secondly, you think about God up there, right? And you find God creating the world. So if I say to you that God is unthinkable, again you go bonkers. How is it possible that we cannot think of God? I can think of God, isn't it? You would be saying that. But whatever you think of God is an idol. In the same way that when you think of I am, it's also an idol. That's the incredible part of it. You are creating an idol whenever you think about yourself, who you are. Everything you think about yourself is simply an idol of yourself. And everything you think about God is also similar. Presence and God is totally related as one. And to know God is to know your presence. Our next question will be, how am I to enter presence? That's correct. Can I think about presence? No, you can't. You can't think about presence. So how am I going to enter presence? You can. You enter your own being. Does that mean that I don't think about anything? If I don't think about anything, would I be able to enter presence? No, you can't. The place of no thinking is also thinking. My good friend, as long as there is life in your body, you will be thinking. Just like the stars of heaven, they move and they never stop. So if you are alive, you will be thinking. There's no such thing as no thinking. So right now, you may be asking me, I'm at a loss. I cannot think of my presence because to think of my presence is just creating an image of the presence. And I'm getting nowhere with that. If I think about God, I'm also creating an image of God. And the commandments is very clear about it. You shall not make for yourself a graven image. So really, you're getting nowhere. The way to get to the place of presence and to God is a solution which the angels told me. And I'm going to tell you what is the solution. Now, it began many, many years ago, at the age of 14, as I said, when suddenly I began to realize that someone was watching me, and that someone who is watching me is watching from within me. I was shocked. And that someone who is watching from me is also watching the whole world. And I was totally shocked because I thought I'm watching with my eyes, but suddenly someone else is watching. And I couldn't get myself over with this, but I just simply forget it. It was 14 years of age and I was totally confused. And of course, many, many years later, as I told you before in my other videos, suddenly I was uncovered. What do I mean by that? The cloth that covers the whole universe, the dress that covers me are removed. And suddenly I found myself in a place of nothingness. Pure nothingness. It was then that I discovered that presence is nothingness. And the reason why I cannot think of presence is because I cannot think of something that is nothing. Because the minute I think of something which is nothing, I'm only confusing the issue. Nothingness means pure nothing. In the same way with God. God does not exist here, nor exist there, nor everywhere. But the greatest truth that you must know is that the presence is still here, and God is still here. And where? Right within each of us. Right within every one of us. We have the privilege of the presence and of God. But if you want to think about God, don't get confused by that. If you want to think about presence, you are on the wrong track. What I just said was marvelous and true. It's right within you, but you cannot think of it. But you have yourself, don't you? That's where your privilege is as a human being. You have the breath of God. That's how you can access the presence. So the three men who came to me in a vision told me the secret of how all my prayers can be answered. Told me that the way to the secret of all life is through the presence, my presence, and there is no other way. And after the vision, I was led to do meditation. And the kind of meditation that I did, as I said before, is unlike any other meditation. I have to observe my own thoughts. Not an easy thing because you yourself you're observing your own thoughts. I did that many, many years, but couldn't find anything until one day I discovered that when I observe my thoughts, breath begins to breathe out from me. I began to analyze what actually happened, and I can tell you what really happened. You see, what is happening is that my thoughts is also myself, right? Because it's coming from my thoughts. But then I'm observing my thoughts. So there is an observer, which is also myself, and a thought, which is also myself. Isn't that right? But when my thought observer is watching the thought itself, there is a gap. Isn't that right? I just created a gap between two thoughts. And this gap between two thoughts is the nothingness. Because a thought is just consciousness, and myself, which is looking at it, that self which I'm thinking of, which is a consciousness, a thought as well. The thought watching a thought. But in between, what happens? There is a nothingness. And this nothingness is where my presence is and where God is. You can't find it anywhere. That's correct. You can only find it within yourself. How? When you observe your own thought. There is no free ride. It's not an easy practice to do. But when you observe your own thought, you create a nothingness in between, from which is a true life, is a true breath, is a true presence, is the one God. So before we close off this video, I just want to emphasize that to get into the presence, you should not be thinking about the presence. Okay? To get to God, you should also not be thinking about God. To get to the presence or to God, you have to go into yourself. And the practice is to observe yourself. In other words, thought, observing thought. Because remember, myself is also a thought. So it's actually thought observing a thought. And in between two thoughts is pure nothingness, where the whole true light of this universe rises from. God created everything from nothingness.